Hey everyone, it is Connie here, and thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. I wanted to share with you guys my first IUI experience, and it just so happened that our very first IUI was a success, and I am 13 weeks and a few days pregnant, and just so shocked and amazed that our very first IUI worked. And we weren't expecting that, because the statistics are that it's not going to work and that we would have to try several times, and maybe, not at all, and just move on to, the IVF. But fortunately, it worked for us the first time, and we're so thankful and so grateful that it did. So yeah, the last time I talked about the IUI was when I was telling you guys in an older video a few months ago that I was about to start the Femara, and then I kind of dropped off the face of the earth on YouTube, and I just didn't want to film that journey because it was just a lot of anxiety for me. I really had a lot of apprehension about doing an IUI even in the first place. I really didn't want to. I desperately wanted to try and get pregnant naturally, and but unfortunately 2 years is going by, and I'm 39 years old. I started TTC when I was 37, pretty much right after I got married. I got married at 36, and then I was trying to get pregnant right after that, so I turned 37 right after I got married. And so it's been quite a journey, and at some point you just kind of say, you know what, you kind of have to put your pride aside and say, I need help here. And I had also time against me. I'm being 39, you're constantly told that, your fertility, your chances of conceiving go down, and, as you get older, your egg quality, this and that, and it's just like a lot of pressure. So I finally bit the bullet, and I did the IUI, and I was really surprised because it seemed like it would be a big deal to do an IUI, and you'd have to take these drugs, and oh my gosh, what kind of side effects are you going to have, and there's all these fears and anxieties. And it turned out that the Femara that I took, 5 milligrams, it wasn't that bad at all. Like, I didn't have any crazy side effects or anything, and I was so surprised. So I took the Femara, I think it was like late March. I took the Femara for 5 days, and then 3 days after the very last day of taking the Femara, I had an ultrasound appointment to check my follicles to see how I did on the Femara. And I ended up producing one really good follicle. It was about 20 millimeters the day that we checked, and the interesting thing about that was that I produced that one follicle on my right ovary, and my right ovary is the one that has a 3-centimeter endometrioma on it. And if you guys don't know what an endometrioma is, another popular term would be a chocolate cyst. And an endometrioma is a result of having endometriosis, which is kind of like your endometrial lining tissue starts growing on different parts of your organs. It can grow on your bowels, your bladder, your ovaries, obviously, your pelvic region, whatever. It grows. It's tissue that's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to stay inside your uterus, in your lining, but for some reason, women with endometriosis, that lining starts to grow in different places, and every month that you bleed, those places that the tissues that it's those little pieces of tissue that is deposited on those different organs, they bleed as well. So yeah, it's just kind of weird, So I have a chocolate cyst on my right ovary, and it's about 3 centimeters, and I've been monitoring it the last few months, and I think it's been there for a long time. I just recently discovered it ever since I started the fertility journey, and I was told by my fertility specialist and also the OBGYN that I have this chocolate cyst, and it just kind of doesn't go away. I was going to do a laparoscopy in the beginning of March of this year, but to get rid of that endometrioma, because I thought it was hindering my fertility and my, chances of conceiving. But when I was told by my OB that by her going in to remove the endometrioma, it could also possibly mean that I could lose my right ovary completely. And she said that she wouldn't just be able to drain it, she would have to cut the entire cyst wall out, which would dramatically diminish the size of my ovary as well, or possibly lose the ovary. So that sort of freaked me out, and also the fact that after the surgery I would have to go on Lupron, which is a drug that would help to keep the endometriosis away. But being on Lupron means that it would have to be at, 3 or 6 months at a time. You get to choose, and you wouldn't be able to try to conceive while you're taking that drug. So I was just kind of like, well, that's counterintuitive. Like, I'm trying to get pregnant, so it just doesn't make any sense, and I don't want to lose my ovary. And there were all these things going on. So 1 week before my laparoscopy, I canceled that surgery. And I just, there were some circumstances that happened that made me make that decision. I had that surgery scheduled for over a month, and certain things happened. We had some little angels that God sent our way, and I ended up not doing the laparoscopy. I canceled it, and I just said, you know what, I'm gonna just go ahead and try an IUI. And because women with endometriosis can still conceive with the endometriosis, and getting rid of the endometriosis doesn't necessarily mean that you will guaranteed get pregnant anyway. So with all those factors considered, I was like, you know what, let's just go ahead and do the IUI. So anyways, I took 5 days of Femara, and then what was I saying? Oh, I totally went off on a tangent. Sorry, guys. Then 3 days later, I had an ultrasound to see the follicle, like how many follicles I may have produced or whatever, and it ended up being the one follicle on my right ovary. And my fertility doctor said, you see this? Your follicle is competing with the endometrioma. And it was just so weird. But I was glad that my ovary was able to produce a follicle, an egg, despite having an endometrioma on it, So that was one of my fears, was that maybe that right ovary is not functioning right because of the endometrioma. So then that was on a Wednesday when I had the follicle scan, and it was a really good follicle at 20 millimeters, very mature. And then I was given the Ovidril trigger shot to be done the following night, Thursday night. And the funny thing about the IUI experience was, like, my doctor was not very good with us in terms of really guiding us, really explaining things well, taking charge and all of that. So I wasn't totally happy with him or the staff, to be honest with you. So aside from that, our IUI was like going very, very smoothly. And he had left it up to me to decide when to do the insemination. Like, he's like, do you want to do it on a Friday or a Saturday? And I was kind of like, well, Saturday is probably better because my husband has his day off. And I was just thinking in terms of practicality. And I was, in retrospect, I really don't appreciate him leaving that decision up to me. I think he's the specialist, so he should have told me, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is when we're going to do the IUI. But he asked me, and I'll get into that a little bit later again. But so I was like, okay, so do the trigger shot on Thursday night and do the IUI Saturday morning. Okay, fine. Now, so I brought the trigger shot home, and then for whatever reason, I decided to check my Clear Blue fertility monitor to see if it was asking me for sticks. And it did, and it was so crazy because I took an OPK stick the very next day, which was Thursday morning. And remember, I had to take the trigger shot that Thursday night. So I took the OPK Thursday morning, and it turned out to be a peak, meaning that when you get a peak, when you get your first peak, you're very close to ovulating. And so I called my doctor's office and I said, hey, look, I took an OPK this morning and I got a peak. And they were like, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, don't do the Ovidril shot and come in on Friday. Okay, so, here's the thing. My doctor's office didn't tell me to take any OPKs or anything like that. I almost didn't do any of that. I almost didn't even check my monitor or anything, or check my my LH surge, because I was gonna leave it up to them. I was feeling like, okay, they're the experts and my ovulation is being closely monitored right now, so I was just gonna sit back and not really do anything. I was just gonna let the doctor's office tell me all the steps. But for whatever reason, I took my OPK that morning because it was starting to ask me for sticks, and I was so glad that I did. I was so glad that I was being proactive, you know what I mean? And I think that basically is my top tip, is that don't just completely leave it up to them. Continually take your OPKs as you're going through an IUI process, because I almost didn't, honestly. I was just leaving it all up to them to tell me what to do, when to come in and do all of that. But if I hadn't taken that OPK, the whole IUI thing would have been kind of screwed up in terms of timing, because I think with IUI, the key is timing. And so, and I was kind of disappointed that my doctor's office didn't even tell me to take OPKs and to do that for myself. So I'm kind of glad that I just took it upon myself to do that. But anyways, so then it got kind of messy with the whole Ovidril situation. I had paid $80 for this tiny little Ovidril trigger shot, and they were not willing to give me a credit or anything, or give it back to them or anything like that, because it was just some crazy situation where they gave me their stash of Ovidril and then they had to order another one to replace their stash, and they weren't willing to cooperate with me. And I was like, well, I'm not even going to do the Ovidril shot, so why are you guys going to just make me throw away the $80? And that's another thing about the fertility office. Like, I felt like they just didn't care about the whole financial aspect of it, because it does matter, and anyways, that's a whole other story. I won't really get into that, but they just kind of annoyed me because I felt like they weren't really providing that kind of patient service, and so then I skipped the Ovidril. I gave it back to them. They eventually gave me a credit for it and stuff like that, and then the IUI was switched from Saturday morning to Friday morning. Okay, now here's the crazy part. On the way to the doctor's office to do the insemination early in the morning, I actually started feeling ovulation cramping. Sorry, I'm burping a lot because of the pregnancy, but I started feeling ovulation cramping on the right side of my pelvic region, which is where the follicle was produced. I actually felt the cramping, and I was just so like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, because we're gonna get inseminated on the day that my egg is gonna be released, and the sperm, was gonna be there waiting for that egg, and which is like, that's the ideal scenario, you know what I mean? And so oh, and by the way, my husband had a really good count. So post-wash, it was 50 million sperm. So the IUI took place Friday, I think it was April 3rd. I don't know, I gotta look on my calendar. I'm pretty sure it was April 3rd. And so the insemination part was the worst part ever. Like, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting it to be that uncomfortable. Maybe it was just the way my doctor put in the speculum. I felt like when you put in the speculum, I felt like I was being pinched and stuff down there, and it was just so uncomfortable. And then I could kind of feel the catheter going in, and I was just kind of like, I just kind of broke out into a sweat because it was almost as bad as the HSG experience. So I don't know which is worse. It was kind of bad on, different levels, And so after he did it, it was really quick. Their table or their bed thing was able to go like where my legs were. So they put it up super high, and I was practically vertical for about 15 minutes. And it was all just so quick. I mean, I was just really surprised with the whole IUI process and how in my mind I had made it as such a big deal, but it really wasn't that bad. I mean, just taking the Femara, coming in a few days later to check the follicle, then coming in again later for the actual insemination, it just all happened so fast, and all the like, it went well, and I think it was successful because of all those different factors. The fact that I had produced a 20 millimeter follicle, which is really, really ideal. I mean, there's some women that their follicles are just too small and they have to up their dosage and all that, and I thought that would happen to me, but it didn't. And then, whatchamacallit, my husband's sperm count post-wash was really good. The fact that I had taken an OPK just in the nick of time, I truly feel like if we just did if I didn't take an OPK and we had just done the IUI on Saturday instead of Friday, I would not be pregnant right now. And I'm kind of mad at my doctor for leaving that choice up to me, saying, oh, do you want to come in on a Friday or Saturday? And it's like, you're the expert, you tell me, because he knows better. I don't know anything. I'm just like, okay, I've got a great follicle, now what? So then me like taking it upon myself to take the OPK, and then I'd actually used my Clear Blue fertility monitor, which gave me a peak, and I actually was like freaking out. And so I went to the store and I got another Clear Blue, like just the regular digital, the smiley face one that it blinks and then it stays still. One of those, I bought a package of those, and I took another OPK just to make sure and it was peak again. And so, just doing all those different things and having to switch last minute to doing the IUI the day before we had originally scheduled and all of that made it a success, So I'm just thanking God for just kind of guiding that whole process and, making it all work out. So so that's my IUI experience story for you, and yay for it being a success. And here I am pregnant, a day that a time in my life that I never thought that I would experience, given the whole my age and the endometriosis and all of that, like just so many doubts and everything, but it all somehow worked out, and I'm just so grateful and so thankful. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I'm sorry if I rambled on for a long time, but thank you for your support and for following my journey, and there are more videos to come, so I hope you guys stay tuned. Thanks for listening again. Bye. I'll see you later.